All right. So now that we're called a secret meeting, I kind of wish Pastor Lance was here, but that's okay. He can get the recording.
Video.
So this is it's an interesting thing when you look at this, and I kind of do a spoiler at the very beginning, because once you see the correlation, you'll be like, oh, okay, this makes a lot of sense. It doesn't change anything about Yeshua, whether you think he did 70 weeks, 3.5 years. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. It's kind of like Jesus, Yeshua. He's still who he is, right? What this did for me when Michael first taught it to me, and he actually hired me to promote that whole idea in this. And all the chronological gospels his life's work was to take the 4 gospels, and instead of having them linear, put them on top of each other and say, where's the correlations and how do we make sense of this? Because the 3.5 year assumption is a problem for the church a lot of the time, because nothing lines up with the feasts. So how is Yeshua part of the feast when he's just kind of trolling around for 3.5 years? And my first thing to folks who say that absolutely believe that without any proof is, okay, so the Pharisees consider Yeshua a threat. So they're not going to get him this Passover. Who is this clown? Mm-hmm. Let's start following him around. If he's really a threat to their livelihood, do you really think he's going to let that go? They're going to let that go for 3.5 years. No way. We didn't get him this Passover. We're going to get him next time. Everybody's together. We're going to get him. So that in itself makes sense. We'll see in a minute here how early church fathers, and early church fathers, like way back, they all wrote that Yeshua's ministry was about 1 year. So, okay, well, that makes sense. That's further kind of logic. And the biggest thing is if you turn to this page here, the colored chart, and compare it to this chart, what we have up here is basically all of the events in Yeshua's life. These events right here, if you can get this chart in a much smaller, like a 1x4 size instead of, this is 12 feet long, but all of these numbers correlate to different events in Yeshua's life. So for example, the feeding of the 5,000 is event number 102. So it just kind of goes through and numbers everything Yeshua did. The biggest thing is, you can see here, it's constant action. One thing after the other, after the other, after the other. If we all watch Yeshua movies, it's like, okay, well, yeah, obviously, today he's in Capernaum, tomorrow he's in Jerusalem, the next day he's in Galilee. They're just all over the place doing everything all the time, right? And this is what we assume that he did. And it makes sense. We all just kind of accept that, yeah, Yeshua was very busy the whole time he was here. So that's what this proves. When you line up all the Gospels and you put them on top of each other, that becomes apparent that, oh, he really did, when it says the next day or on the 3rd day or the following day in Cana, but it literally was the next day. So Michael took that and went, okay, let's make that literal. So we do that, correlate it with ancient Roman records, with Josephus and everything else. All of a sudden, this all lines up. It's kind of like, oh, okay. So this might help Christians trying to investigate who Yeshua is according to the feasts make more sense of who he is. That's all this helps with. Because, like I said, this is all action, one thing after the other. Like, there's no gaps here, right? There's event after event after event after event, boom, boom, boom. Here, there's just a space where, okay, he was teaching in rural Judea at that time, or he was teaching in Galilean synagogues, and there's literal weeks here. So this is like week number 18, week number 19, week number 20, till you get to 70. And that's the other really interesting thing. So we all know numbers matter in the Bible, right? So 70 weeks from the time he's baptized in the Jordan to the time the disciples are baptized with the Holy Spirit. Exactly to the day, 70 weeks. So that again is kind of like, oh, to those of us who are paying attention, that makes sense. Now, again, one more time, everything's back to back to back to back to back. Maybe a couple of weeks here and there. If you look at this and we assume 3.5 weeks or 3.5 years, look at the first part. So you see on the left there, you have 3 and then you go to 12, right? Those are not weeks or days like this is. Those are months. Nothing is happening for 9 months. And then again, move up to the next gap. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Another 6 months where absolutely nothing is mentioned about Yeshua in any gospel. Does that make sense? If he's the Messiah, you're going to write down everything this guy does. And you're just going to take a vacay for 9 months, and then another 6 months, and then another 5 months. If you put together a 3.5-year ministry, that's what it looks like. There's 3 giant gaps where nothing is said about the Son of God going around and doing miracles. Like, it just makes no sense. So where do we get this from? Okay, so this is something that was made up. Whether accidental, Michael Rood considers it deliberate because they were trying to separate the church from anything Jewish. So let's push Yeshua away from this Hebrew stuff as much as we can. I don't know if it was that nefarious. That's where we get into the John 6:4 thing that we're going to read about, where at its most innocent, it is a wrong feast. It says a feast of the Jews was, let's just go there. So John 6:4. And I don't have it in here because Michael literally takes it out and says it's a forgery. I'm not including it. It doesn't make any sense. And it was in some early transcripts not in there. So who can read John 6:4?
And the Passover was near the festival of the Yehudim.
Okay, a festival of the Yehudim. It says Passover.
Yeah, and the Passover feast. Yeah.
And is Passover in anybody's Bible italicized?
No.
No?
Not in this one.
Okay.
Because of how it's translated.
Yeah, so some are, some aren't. So at the very least, it's not Passover. It's Shavuot, if anything. Because John 5 is all about the spring feasts.
Right.
John 7 is all about the fall feasts. That makes sense. How are we getting a whole year in the middle here in one chapter? That doesn't make sense. So, thank you. So John 6:4. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. So, yeah, that just doesn't make any sense. So if we consider it Shavuot, okay, it might make sense.
Okay.
But at the very most, or at the very least, it's not Passover. So we all know there's things not quite correct in our, so we all know that. So that's kind of where it comes from. But here's why the length of the ministry matters. So let's just go to our handout here, and we'll start explaining why all of this matters. I'm just going to read through it. Most believers have never questioned the commonly accepted belief that Yeshua ministered for approximately 3.5 years. Michael Rood argues that this assumption has become so deeply rooted in Christian tradition that few people have examined whether it actually agrees with the gospel records. According to Michael Rood, the issue is more significant than simply determining the length of Yeshua's ministry. He believes it affects our understanding of the biblical feast calendar, gospel chronology, and Daniel's prophecy of the 77s. So that is a central issue here as well. Because then all of a sudden we have somewhere to plug that in, if this is 70 weeks. Rood explains that the Gospels contain numerous chronological markers tied to the annual biblical feasts. The Gospel of John records Yeshua's journeys to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage feasts, while Matthew, Mark, and Luke primarily record events occurring between those feasts. So when we look up here, that's what each one of these colors is all about. If you ever dive into this chart, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, purple, green, red, blue. So Matthew recorded this, Mark recorded that, Luke recorded that, and John recorded this. So you can see where everything kind of like, some mentioned others. The curious thing is the only miracle all 4 mentioned was the feeding of the 5,000.
Okay.
So Michael took that and went, okay, so that's the only one. Let's go backwards, let's go forwards, and then kind of spread it out. He didn't know, he wasn't fixated on 70 weeks. He just knew early church writers, I mean, you want to call them church fathers, early church writers were saying it was about a year. So he's going, okay, let's kind of correlate it. And much to his shock, it was exactly 70 weeks. Which just kind of makes sense the way God does things, right? Mm-hmm. Passover lamb, Yeshua dies on Passover. He's coming back. Why wouldn't it be Yom Teruah? So when these accounts, third paragraph, last sentence there, last sentence. When these accounts are synchronized according to the biblical calendar, Rood argues that a consistent chronology emerges. So, central to his investigation is the feeding of the 5,000, which I just mentioned, the only miracle recorded by all four gospel writers, which is kind of amazing in itself. Like, that's the only one that all four mentioned. If you go through it, yep, it really is. It's the only one. Because every gospel includes this event, Rood views it as the key synchronization point for aligning the narratives. Rood further contends that the chronology matters because it directly impacts the interpretation of Daniel's prophecy. He argues that later interpreters adopted a 3.5-year ministry model that obscured a different prophetic pattern found within the gospel accounts themselves. So, fill in the blank. According to Rood, the length of Yeshua's ministry is important because it directly affects the interpretation of Daniel's what prophecy? 77's ministry. Rood argues that the feeding of the 5,000, that's pretty obvious, provides a key synchronization point for all four gospel accounts. And according to Rood, the gospel of who records Yeshua's journeys? John. Yeah. The journeys to the major pilgrimage feasts in Jerusalem. All right. So where do we get this from? That's where we have part 2. The historical origin of this traditional view. So Michael Rood asserts that during the first 3 centuries after Yeshua's resurrection, Christian writers consistently taught, or at least never contradicted, the understanding that Messiah's ministry lasted approximately 1 year. There was never one argument that, oh no, it was 3.5. Nope, not until Eusebius. He points specifically to Clement of Alexandria, Origen, I've never heard this name, Lactantius, I guess, and several other early writers as evidence that this was the prevailing view in early Christianity. The turning point, according to Rood, came in the 4th century. So 400 years after Yeshua is where we get this idea. Everybody before never argued a year, which is interesting because that's where we get the Catholic Church and all that kind of stuff. With Eusebius of Caesarea, Eusebius proposed that Messiah's ministry lasted 3.5 years. Rood emphasizes that Eusebius offered this conclusion as an interpretation of Daniel chapter 9 rather than as a conclusion drawn directly from the gospel narratives. Over time, this interpretation became accepted as historical fact despite the absence of earlier support. And Rood further notes that he considers a remarkable irony. Even Eusebius acknowledged that Matthew, Mark, Luke only record approximately 1 year ministry of activity. Yet, Eusebius nevertheless proposed a much longer ministry. And there's all kinds of other reasons that I won't bore you with, but it's in the introduction to the chronological gospels, and we have that as a separate PDF that if you guys want it, I just will. I'll just send it to you, and you can, if you're curious, you can read through as to what he argues about that. So, Rood argues that the 3.5 ministry theory did not come popular until the what century? 4th century. Yep. According to Rood, Eusebius derived his chronology primarily from his interpretation of the book of Daniel, yes, rather than from a straightforward reading of the Gospels. Okay, so part 3, the feeding of the 5,000. So Rood considers the feeding of the 5,000 to be the most important chronological marker in the Gospels. It is the only miracle recorded by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, making it a unique synchronization point because all 4 Gospel writers describe this event. It allows the timelines of our 4 accounts to be aligned. According to Rood's reconstruction, this miracle occurred near the end of summer, shortly after the apostles returned from their preaching assignments through Galilee. John records that only a few days later, Yeshua taught in the synagogue at Capernaum about the last day and the resurrection. Rood argues that this teaching corresponds with Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, because resurrection is a central theme associated with that feast. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Luke then placed the Mount of Transfiguration only a few days later. So Rood identifies this event with Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Thus, the feeding of the 5,000 becomes anchored between major biblical feast days. This chronological placement is crucial to his overall argument. So that is kind of interesting. All right. So the feeding of the now, let's see here. The yeah. So this is not about the feast, John 6:4. This is after the feeding of the 5,000, right? So that's near the end of summer. Then it's Yom Teruah. So that.
I was gonna say, yeah, the resurrection, that transfiguration really should have lined up with Yom Teruah.
It could, yeah, and then maybe he's off. He's off, right?
Okay.
Yeah, because this is. I mean, it's not like this is ironclad.
That's good. This is very good.
So, but I think his general assumption about this 70 weeks in general is closer than 3.5 years. It just doesn't make any sense, 3.5 years. Yeah. And it's interesting too, that if you look at things that, and I think you brought this up, Greg, that when Yeshua talks about, when he yells in a loud voice, all who come to me will never thirst again. You know, that's the water libation ceremony. Well, guess what? That lines up with this. It lines up exactly with this. It happens on the last day of Shemini Atzeret. It's right there. Let's find that actually. So that was. So here's feeding of the 5,000. Let's see here. I mean, he had to do it here because it was only 1 year. It has to be there. And he actually correlates too that, by the way, that Purim, you know, the resurrection of the people, happened right when Lazarus was raised.
Really?
So that's kind of interesting too.
The last great day.
Yep, and Yeshua healing the man who was born blind. Hanukkah, Feast of Lights.
Okay.
Okay, that's gonna make people click at that time, right? Okay, and let's see here, Transfiguration. Okay, there's the Transfiguration. What were we finding again?
The light. He says that the third.
Oh yeah, the water libation
libation
ceremony.
is
Okay.
the last great day of the after tabernacles.
Okay,
Big
so
after
Sukkot. So this is it's around 126, 127. Okay. Let me see here. I am not smart enough to remember where that story is. Anyone remember? Greg, do you know?
Which one now?
Where Yeshua says, if anyone thirsts, come to me.
7, isn't it?
John chapter 7? Okay. That's
Yeah, Tabernacles.
Tabernacles. Okay, yeah. Feast of Tabernacles. Maybe I'm not going far enough.
So it would be
37, 38.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Okay. John 7:37. Okay, and according to, now, when Michael does this, he's being as exact as he can with certain days, and if it says a week or so, like when they're out in the Galilee and they're not really specific of what day, what happened, it's during a couple of weeks. But this one, where you can correlate things, so 20th day of the 7th month, Friday, October 10th, 27 CE, like he gets that specific.
yeah.
And then here, when Yeshua proclaims the fulfillment of the latter rain outpouring, that is Shemini Atzeret, the last great day, guess what? It is the 22nd day of the 7th month, October 12, 27 CE. It's Shemini Atzeret. It's that day. It is literally that day. So that's kind of cool. And then there's other things that happen too, where when he says this kind of stuff, you can see that 2 or 3 events that happen even over the transition of one chapter to the next, we're all on the same day. So when he correlates this, it's like, oh, now you kind of get the screenplay. All of these 4 things happen on this one day. Or when he delivered the Sermon on the Mount, he also did this and this and this on the same day. You know, it was kind of crazy, and you realize how busy the guy was. So anyway, yeah, it's kind of neat. So that's the feeding of the 5,000 becomes anchored between biblical feast days, and this chronological placement is crucial to his overall argument. All right, so the feeding of the 5,000 serves as a chronological marker, or synchronization point, because it appears in all 4 gospel accounts. So synchronization is I didn't leave enough room to spell
I'm
that.
gonna squeeze it in.
Sync, a sync point. Rude connects Yeshua's resurrection themed teaching in John 6 with the Feast of Trumpets. Yeah. Okay. Now, whether he, like you said, Greg, maybe he preached about the Feast of Trumpets, and then on the Feast of Trumpets was the Mount of Transfiguration. That could be too. When he says that, let's see here. Okay, feeding of the 5,000. 1 and 2. Hang on a second. Let me see something here.
Be in between those two festivals.
Yeah,
Because, because during the, in between those two festivals is when they get the resurrected new bodies.
right. Yeah, so that then you see the resurrected bodies. That would make sense.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Let's see. Feature of Trumpets. And then- Bear with me 1 second here.
You said the feeding of the 5,000?
The Transfiguration was what I'm looking at here.
Oh, that's.
I'm trying to figure out why he argues that. Let's see. Okay, so here's his argument about that.
Where you at?
This is in Matthew 17, 1 to 9.
Yeah, but what marker in the chronological?
Oh, okay. This is event number 119. So that puts us here. And does anyone know? So this is interesting too. I'm going to go to 118 for a second to share something because that's kind of cool. I didn't know this. Let's see here. So at Caesarea Philippi, there's this place called the Gates of Hell.
Yes.
You heard of that?
I've been there.
Have you?
Mhm.
To hell?
My mother-in-law's on.
To that place. Caesarea
I
Philippi.
don't have a mother.
Okay.
That explains a lot.
So when Yeshua, that's where he said the gates of hell will not prevail.
Yeah.
So he was literally there. So this is Matthew 16, verse 18, which says, yeah, so this is where he says to Peter, on this rock I will build my Kehillah, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. He's literally telling them this when he's at Caesarea Philippi, at the temple of Pan, or what was at the gates of hell there. And you get that. So Michael's a big fan of the ancient Hebrew Matthew, which brings a lot of clarity to a lot of this. And actually, they're finding manuscripts now of Revelation that were supposedly originally written in Hebrew as well.
Calling it the fifth gospel, right?
Yeah, and it's becoming kind of apparent that, well, was everything written in Hebrew first? Who knows? Maybe some of Paul's letters were not. He was talking to Greeks, but kind of interesting. Because they're using Hebrew idioms, and it just makes more sense.
Yes.
So he says, Kepha, you are a rock, and upon you I will build my house of prayer. This statement gives clarity to the remaining context. According to the ancient Hebrew Matthew, Yeshua is going to build a house of prayer on Kepha, not the Kehillah, which he builds on himself as the foundation stone that was considered unacceptable by the builders of Pharisaic Judaism. The gates of hell, which is an archaeological feature still extant at the pagan city of Caesarea Philippi, where they are now standing, will not be able to prevail against the house of prayer that Kepha will establish in Jerusalem. What they bind or loose in prayer will be honored in heaven as they pray according to the will of Yeshua and the Father. There is no evidence that Kepha or his purported spiritual descendants would be the foundation of the Kehillah, of Messiah. This is contrary to all the scripture regarding, regardless, of the translations one reads, and contrary to the physical reality which is seated in Rome. So, kind of interesting. All right, so this transfiguration. So he says, both Matthew 17:1 and Mark 9:2 report that after 6 days, Yeshua took 3 of his disciples to a high mountain, where he changed before their eyes and shone with the brightness of the sun. Luke 9:28 records that the same incident, his ordination as the Kohen Gadol after the order of the Melchizedek, occurred about 8 days after the teachings. After 6 days is the 7th day, while about, or having not reached the point or number of 8 days, is also the 7th day. Both Greek constructions record the same event occurring at the same time by using 2 parallel Greek mathematical constructions. The 4th day after the teachings that concluded with the feeding of the 4,000 brings us to Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. So that's where he gets that from. But if that makes any sense at all.
That even ties in with the timeline, the 6,000, the 6 days, the 6,000 years. And then on the 7th day is the resurrection.
Yep, there you go. That would make sense. All right, the 9 words that changed everything, part 4. So this is where John 6:4 comes in. Most modern Bibles include the statement, and the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. Root argues that these words were not originally part of John's gospel. I don't know if I think that or not. Some early manuscripts, there's this really, it's actually called obscure, something obscure, or minuscule. That's what it's called. Not something minuscule is the name of the manuscript, and it does not have John 6:4 in it. And there's a lot of weight put on that one manuscript, and I kind of go, maybe, maybe not, but it becomes pretty obvious that it was a wrong feast. A bunch of Gentiles, transcribing this didn't understand
What it meant.
when they said the feast. Well, everybody knew what that was, right? Yeah.
Did you mention earlier, Scott, that there's a possibility it could have been Shavuot?
Yes. And that's what we're going to get into here.
Okay, the reason I asked that is objectively, isn't Shavuot the completion of Passover?
Yes.
So, yes, maybe that was the understanding.
And maybe that might have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
6:4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it could be, yeah. I mean, in our understanding, maybe that's 50 days later, but to the average Christian who's reading it, oh, Passover, I know, that's April. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're right, yeah, that's very interesting. Never thought about that.
And also, I think it's mistaken, or it's inserted in there without thinking, because it's not a festival of the Jews.
Right.
It's God's festivals.
Yeah. Well, that's how they all read, right? The Festival of the Jews is everything of the Jews. It's the Jews.
I'm just gonna insert this here.
Please.
It seems like a good place. So on Tucker Carlson this past week, I watched this thing because I saw a clip and I was like, I'm gonna see what this guy has to say. And it was all about Israel and why Israel is not Israel and, all the crap and propaganda that's going around. But they talked specifically about the 70 weeks. And they say that and this guy was saying he agrees with it, but he was also saying.
He agrees with
that-
this?
No, agreeing with what I'm gonna tell you. And most churches take this, what I'm gonna say, as gospel. In that, we are in the 69th week right now and have been for 2,000 years. That's the Christian understanding of Daniel. So just saying that's what most Christians, if they even think about this, is kind of what they're taught. And that was on Tucker Carlson's last week.
Just as an aside, so dovetailing with that, I interviewed this guy named, I'm going to remember his name. Oh gosh, Ryan Morrow is his name, Ryan Morrow. And he's sometimes a political correspondent with Glenn Beck and things like that. And he was a younger guy, but he takes people like, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and all these yahoos are against Israel. And it's starting to make sense with end times. And he presented this, that the Russian Orthodox Church was praising Charlie Kirk's work at the same time as doing something nefarious on the other side. They're trying to make, the Russian Orthodox Church is making nice with Candace Owens because they like her influence on young Americans. They are trying to tell American kids, hey, your church has lost their way. We're the true church. Listen to us. Meanwhile, they are taking a view of Revelation very much like Islam does, where the Antichrist is actually the hero, and it's Yeshua. They're taking Revelation and switching it. They think they're right in that the character we see in Revelation as the Antichrist is actually Yeshua coming back. And that's Islam's Mahdi, the 12th Imam, right? Or whatever, what is that the 12th Imam? Their Messiah. Their Messiah. And that's the Mahdi.
And people like Tucker Carlson are saying out loud out there that Islam is closer to Christianity than the Jews are. So there's this paradigm shift happening where Islam and Christianity are sort of coming together because they believe in a Yeshua to come, the Mahdi, you know,
right.
But the Jews don't. So let's align ourselves with Islam.
Right. So if the Christians and Islam is getting together, who's the enemy? The Jews.
Well, this is nothing new. Remember Robert Schuller and Rick Warren? They collaborated and came up with Chrislam
Yes.
years ago.
Yes.
So this is nothing new. This is just something that now is manifesting current day and see.
And Russia is actually appealing to young Christians, young Christian Americans, saying, hey, if you come to Russia, we'll give you citizenship right off the bat. Be part of us. Come on over. So they're trying to divide and conquer from within using faith and Christian podcasters that they have influenced through bots, not even real people, that they're right on and they're doing the right thing and all this kind of stuff, and they're getting their egos inflated. And why don't you come over to Russia? Come over with us. And so they're actually bringing Candace Owens over to Russia because there's lots of people who are going to sue her for what she's been said in America. And they said, don't worry about it. We'll bring all your assets over to Russia. They can't touch you. That's why she's doing this. And he's uncovered all this junk. So this nonsense we see happening on Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and blah, 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 it actually has spiritual overtones to it.
Oh, yeah.
So, interesting. Okay, so the 9 words that changed everything. Root argues that these words were not part of John's gospel. This is the first paragraph there. He believes that they were inserted centuries later to create an additional Passover and thereby add an entire year to the Messiah's ministry. And Michael has an extensive reason why he thinks it was to be a 3.5-year ministry. Like I said, the general consensus is it was to separate. That's the Jews. We're Christians. We're different, kind of thing. It was just to create this divide. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. But that's where we got 3.5 years from. Why does he make this claim? First, the chronology does not fit. All 4 Gospels place the feeding of the 5,000 near the end of summer, only weeks before the Feast of Tabernacles. Yet, Passover occurs in the spring. If John 6:4 is accepted as authentic, the chronology suddenly jumps backward by approximately 6 months. Second, Yeshua remained in Galilee instead of traveling to Jerusalem. The Torah requires Israelite males to appear before Yehovah at the pilgrimage feasts. Root argues that this were truly Passover. Yeshua's failure to attend would create a serious theological problem. Third, the crowd was fed with leavened barley loaves.
Yeah.
During the Feast of Unleavened Bread, leaven was to be removed. Root sees this as further evidence that Passover was not taking place. All right, so fill in the blank. Root argues that this disputed phrase in John 6:4 artificially inserted another year, another Passover, into the ministry timeline. One of Root's objections is that the crowd was fed with leavened barley loaves. Yeah, inappropriate during the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
That's a real good one.
So what is the offering, Shavuot?
Yeah, Shavuot.
Shavuot
Is
was
it
2
Shavuot?
loaves of
Ah,
Leavened.
barley,
Yeah.
is it not?
is it? That's a good question.
Yes.
I think
Yeah,
it is.
barley's in then, and then wheat is in the winter.
Right.
What I said.
Okay.
So, yeah, exactly, so it would make sense, it's more of
Yeah.
Shavuot,
Okay,
just
oh,
not
there we go.
Passover.
I never even thought about that aspect of it. Okay, the problem of the missing year, part 5. According to his reconstruction, the feeding of the 5,000 occurred near the end of summer. He notes that all 4 gospel writers placed this event shortly before the fall feast season. John records Yeshua teaching in Capernaum about the last day and the resurrection, which lines up. And that's what you find throughout this chronology here, is whatever Yeshua is preaching in the synagogue, it lines up with what's going on. So much so, in fact, that you guys know I had that construction business with a couple of friends of mine. One of those guys is named John Snyder. Not Bo Duke, but the other John Snyder. Although he does look like, what's his name? The actor who played
Javier.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Johnny Depp.
He looks like Johnny Depp.
Oh my
strangely
God.
enough. Like an old Johnny Depp. Yeah, almost. Yeah. But anyway, so he thought, well, that's interesting. So he says, so he read, the chronological gospels and all this, and he goes, yeah, I think that jives. I'm going to test it against the Torah because I bet it's not right. So he took a 1-year annual Torah reading and lined it up with, okay, well, if Yeshua was in the synagogue on this day, they were probably reading that portion.
Good, yeah.
It lines up.
Wow.
That's what sold me on, you gotta be kidding. More, and now some of it's not exact, not every single portion is mentioned by Yeshua, but like, I think there's like 10, 20 different times. It's like what he's preaching in the synagogue on that day is what they would have been studying.
Yeah, that's definitely the case, yeah, I agree with that.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that is cool.
Because how else is Yeshua going to connect with these people? He's claiming to be the Messiah. You better be right in there with what we're learning, and you better know our stuff. And he does, right? So much so he makes fools of the Pharisees. No wonder people went, oh, this guy's onto something.
Why wouldn't everything that he does line up with something significant?
Exactly.
At this point,
Well, that's why we say, like, and I think too, I don't know what you guys think, tell me what you think, but I think, like, literally, it's going to be a Yom Teruah when he arrives. There's no question. It's not going to be, oh, it was kind of like within a few weeks or a couple of months. No, he died on Passover.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's coming back on Yom Teruah.
No question about it.
Yeah. And whether it's this day or that day,
It's
who
okay.
cares? Because nobody knows the day or the hour. Exactly. So, interesting. All right. So, all right, where were we here? John records Yeshua teaching in Capernaum the last day. Yes. The last day and the resurrection, which Rude associates with the Feast of Trumpets. Shortly afterward, John chapter 7 opens with preparations for the Feast of Tabernacles. It just makes sense. Mm-hmm. John's not going to take a 9-month hiatus or a 6-month hiatus. If the disputed Passover reference in John 6:4 is accepted, however, a serious chronological problem emerges. Passover occurs in the spring, while Tabernacles occurs 6 months later in the fall. This means that approximately 6 months must be inserted before the events of John 6, and another 6 months before the Feast of Tabernacles described in John 7. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all continue to provide the detailed accounts before and after this period, yet all 4 writers would have to become simultaneously silent for an entire year. Not one of them mentioning anything, which doesn't make any sense. All right, Rude also points out that if the feeding of the 5,000 occurred at Passover, Yeshua never traveled to Jerusalem for that feast, even though Passover was one of the 3 pilgrimage feasts that required attendance. Instead, the gospel accounts place him in Galilee, feeding thousands of people with leavened barley loaves, and later preparing to travel to Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles. So there's all kinds of, it doesn't make sense. Even a delegation of Pharisees from Jerusalem appears in Galilee during this period. If Passover were approaching, both Yeshua and these religious leaders would be preparing to travel to Jerusalem rather than remaining in Galilee. Because of these factors, Rude concludes that the chronology has been artificially stretched. In his view, the disputed Passover reference creates a phantom year that does not fit in the internal evidence of the gospel records. Again, it doesn't change anything, it's just interesting. According to Rood, accepting the disputed Passover creates a period of narrative silence in all four Gospels. Rood argues that the disputed chronology creates an entire year of largely unrecorded ministry activity. And finally, according to Rood, all four Gospel writers place the feeding of the 5,000 near the end of summer. End of summer. Alrighty. The Feast of John chapter 5. Rood argues that a second chronological error occurred in John chapter 5. John simply, okay, so let's, oh shoot, I didn't write the reference there. Well, let's see if we can find it. Okay, so John simply refers to a feast of the Jews.
John 1.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. And Yeshua went up to Jerusalem. Okay, so John simply refers to a feast of the Jews without identifying which feast it was. Traditional interpreters often assume that this was the feast of Passover. Rood rejects this conclusion. Instead, he identifies the feast as Shavuot, or Pentecost.
Okay.
So, he argues that Shavuot occurred, so I guess he's saying that John 6:4 then is the fall feasts were coming, not that day, right?
Yeah.
The feast of the Jews was 9, so that's not Shavuot, this is Shavuot in chapter 5. He argues that Shavuot occurs 7 weeks after Passover and fits naturally into the flow of events. If the feast is identified as Passover instead, another year must be inserted into the narrative. According to Rood, this would mean that Yeshua accomplished very little during an entire year, and that key disciples remained in their ordinary occupations with almost no recorded activity. He regards this as historically implausible. Several writers over the last few centuries have argued that either Passover was added to the text, or John originally referred to some other feast, or the chronology has been misunderstood. These arguments are usually motivated by chronology rather than manuscript evidence. Some have suggested tabernacles, because John 7 immediately discusses the Feast of Tabernacles. Others argue that the timing of the feeding of the 5,000 fits better with a fall feast than with a Passover. All right. So Rood argues that the unnamed feast in John 5 was Shavuot, rather than Passover. So if John 5 refers to Passover,
Yeah, no, what's 6:4?
then 6:4, well, let's talk about that. So, go backward here.
Why does it even have to be a festival?
Yeah,
I mean, if it's erroneously inserted, it's just a distraction.
that's a good point. So, if we just read through that, I don't even read here. So, if you go to John 6:3 and then 6:5, okay. Yeshua went up to the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. When he looked up and saw a large crowd, well, that seems to flow kind of nicely, doesn't it? that was missing John 6:4. Completely leaving it out.
Yeah.
That's kind of sweet, though.
He sat down, he looked up, okay, and saw a large crowd coming toward him. Yeshua said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he knew that what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages will not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little.
Well, then there's an error right there. Why would you be buying bread on Passover for people?
Yeah, that was his argument. Leaven barley loaves? Like, why?
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. Interesting.
Okay, so then,
So one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people? So make the people sit down. There was a great deal of grass in the place, blah, 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 blah." Okay.
I think in my complete Jewish Bible, I had written in 5, Shavuot, in 6, Yom Teruah, 6:4, and in 7 is Feast of Booths, which is, of course, is what they say. From somebody that I was listening to, that was their thoughts.
you could guess or extrapolate that comment there is resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
Rise up, take up thy bed and walk, but
Yep.
that's a thin.
That would be, if that's Shavuot,
No, I'm thinking.
So, see,
I'm thinking Jerusalem.
look at John 2. John 2 verse 13. So this is when Yeshua cleanses the temple, which we know is there's a Passover there.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So Passover number 1
Right?
is John 2. So let's see.
Well, then why couldn't these 4 and 5 be continuation of unleavened bread?
Exactly. There's probably, that's what I'm trying to show here. There's not that much time that passes through here. So John, I'm just losing my place here. Forgive me. This thing's kind of hard to follow sometimes. John.
And you got the Kareem in there too.
Yeah, exactly.
Were you going back to John 2 or 6 2?
Yeah, it was John 2, the first verse. John 2.
First, it was Passover.
Yeah. So there's your first Passover.
Passover, 4 could be,
Not first Passover, but Passover for that year, let's just say, right? So John 2, let's say that was 13. John 2, 13. All right, hang on a second here. John, oh, that's why I'm way too far ahead. Okay. John 2, 13. All right. So,
Page 66.
so here's the sequence of events here. So Yeshua arrives in Jerusalem for Passover. Day 54 of his ministry. Okay.
2:13, is that what you're saying?
2:13. Yeah. 13, 14-ish. Okay.
And then
Nicodemus. Let's see here. Where is
chapter 3.
So that's a little bit ahead here. John. Yes. Okay, so the Feast of Unleavened Bread concludes with a high Sabbath. That is day 62, and that's between John 2:23 and 3:21. So we're already going into another chapter there.
Yeah.
The next, so Yeshua leaves Jerusalem after the Feast of Unleavened Bread for the weekly Shabbat. That takes us to John 3, verses 22 to 36. Talks all about that. Then he goes up to the district of the Gentiles, and that is John 4 now. We're into John 4 already. And then Yeshua leaves the Galilee and arrives at Jerusalem for the Feast of Pentecost, John 5:1. So you're right. That's just those few weeks in between there. So John 5:1, after this there was a festival of the Jews. Okay, now that becomes obvious. That's Shavuot.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then John 6:4, now that Passover, the Feast of the Jews, was near. Now all of a sudden, if you just kind of go through it, that doesn't even make any sense.
Well, how about over instead of near?
Yeah,
No,
okay.
just one word.
Okay, let's see. Now the Passover, the Feast of the Jews, was
Finished.
When you looked up and saw a large crowd, you're like, yeah. So
No.
therefore he had barley loaves. That would make sense. Anyway.
It
Well,
was
in chapter
observed.
6, it does reference the bread out of heaven, and my Father gives you the true bread, so maybe that's where they inadvertently pulled Passover into, I don't know. For the bread of Elohim is he who comes out of heaven, gives life to the earth, so I don't know, it's reference to bread there, whatever. Just could be manna, bread of life.
Everything, yeah.
Well, no,
Whatever.
six is all about the manna. Chapter 6, he goes in there and says, but that's not even gonna help you. The bread's gonna help you as meat.
Right.
51, I am the living bread. You live forever. So it's 8 to 40, that 6 is, Teruah.
Approaching Teruah, yeah, because 7 you get into that, right?
I think it should.
Well, 7 is tabernacles.
Yeah.
Right, the right, okay.
Okay, so 6 has gotta be, because he talks about well, look at verse,
Was 9, so it's getting close. It wasn't the day. So yeah, so yes, getting close.
44, 644.
644, which says,
I shall raise him up in the last day.
"No one come to me unless drawn by the Father."
yeah, well, no, I will raise him up on the last day.
Day. There you go. Okay.
So I think that's what it is. I think this is a resurrection chapter. Teruah. It's just,
Chapter 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the next chapter is whose side?
Yeah, raise it up on the last, even 39.
Right,
I'll raise you up on the last day.
oh, actually, he says that 4 times in that chapter.
Hmm.
he does.
So that's significant.
Yep, yep.
Teruah.
He talks about living forever in there and all that. And yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, because at the resurrection, we'll be in the Olam Abba. We'll be outside of time.
Mhm.
So that's truly
Yeah,
forever.
those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life. That's all in there too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All in that resurrection.
Yeah,
Okay.
That makes sense.
Cool. All right, part 7. Evidence from early Christian writers. Here we go. Okay, so Michael Rood places considerable weight on the testimony of early Christian writers, often called the Church Fathers. He argues that these men provide valuable evidence because they lived much closer to the apostolic era than modern scholars and had access to manuscripts that no longer exist. Rood points out that the oldest surviving manuscripts available today are copies from the 3rd century and later, because the original manuscripts no longer exist. The writings of early Christian leaders can sometimes provide clues regarding what the earlier text contained. According to Rood, several influential church fathers consistently described Yeshua's ministry as lasting approximately 1 year rather than 3.5. Clement of Alexandria taught at the famous Library of Alexandria and had access to many ancient manuscripts. Writing around 200 CE, Clement stated that Yeshua's ministry lasted about 1 year. Rood argues that Clement could not have reached this conclusion if the disputed Passover reference in John 6:4 had been present in the manuscripts available to him. That's an interesting point. Irenaeus lived from approximately 130 to 202 CE and was a disciple of Polycarp, who had himself been a disciple of the Apostle John. Because of this direct connection to the apostolic generation, Rood considers Irenaeus to be an especially important witness. Rood notes that Irenaeus listed the Passovers mentioned in John's Gospel, yet did not include the Passover found in John 6:4. Rood argues that this omission suggests that the disputed reference was not present in the text available to Irenaeus. Okay? Origen, who lived from approximately 184 to 253, was a disciple of Clement of Alexandria and is widely recognized as one of the earliest textual scholars in Christian history. He actively collected and compared manuscripts in an effort to identify accurate readings. Rood points out that Origen wrote that Yeshua taught for 1 year and some months. According to Rood, such a statement would be difficult to reconcile with a ministry spanning multiple Passovers. Root argues that Clement, Origen, and Irenaeus were not isolated voices. He cites that Lactantius, Philestrius, another dude, and another dude, and another dude.
All them dudes.
Dudes. And several other theologians listed in the Catholic Encyclopedia who likewise described Messiah's ministry as lasting approximately 1 year. Which makes sense with the title that Yeshua said, the acceptable year of the Lord. Which he said, guess what? At the beginning. This is the acceptable year of the Lord. And of course he didn't finish the statement because that didn't happen yet. That's the fall feast. And that was boom. That was near the beginning of this.
Cool.
So, yeah. Interesting. According to Rood, there was no significant dissenting opinion during the first 3 centuries of Christianity regarding the duration of Messiah's ministry. He contends that the belief in a ministry lasting approximately 1 year was the dominant understanding among Christian writers. Rood identifies Eusebius of Caesarea as the first major writer to promote a ministry lasting 3.5 years. Writing in the 4th century, Eusebius argued that Messiah's ministry lasted 3 years and a half, connecting the chronology to his interpretation of Daniel's 77's prophecy. According to Rood, Eusebius did not arrive at this conclusion from the gospel narratives themselves, but from his prophetic interpretation of Daniel chapter 9. Rood further notes that even Eusebius acknowledged that Matthew, Mark, and Luke record only about 1 year of Yeshua's ministry. Because of this, Rood concludes that the earliest Christian writers were working from gospel texts that did not support a 3.5 year ministry. He therefore argues that the disputed Passover of John 6:4 was not part of the earliest textual tradition, but became accepted only after the 4th century. I think the biggest thing to me is when you read John 6:3 and then go over to 6:5, you don't skip a beat. So why is it there? And who knows how much else is there in other little parts of the Bible, right? We have italics for a reason. Those things were not there. It's like everybody argues, oh no, the word is the word. Well, we all know better, right? Come on, there's been human editing. Yeah. Rood cites that who, a disciple of Polycarp? Erroneous. As we might nickname him. Erroneous, who himself had been a disciple of the Apostle John. According to Rood, who was the first major Christian writer to promote? Eusebius. And Rood argues that Clement taught that Yeshua's ministry lasted how long? 1 year.
Approximately 1 year.
Yep. All right. Daniel's 77. For Michael Rood, Daniel's prophecy of the 77s is one of the keys to understanding the true chronology of Yeshua's ministry. In Daniel 9, 24 to 27, let's go there. Daniel 9, 24 to 27. Who's got it? Bueller? Anyone?
70 weeks.
Go ahead.
70 weeks to determine upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring an everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore that and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Mashiach the Prince, 7 weeks and 62 weeks, the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Mashiach be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come up shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and end therefore with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice of the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate.
Okay. So, in that passage, the angel Gabriel revealed a prophecy concerning the 77s that would unfold for Israel and Jerusalem. Rood teaches that this prophecy contains multiple layers of fulfillment. Most Bible students recognize the long-term fulfillment involving years, but Rood argues that there is also a messianic fulfillment directly connected to the life and ministry of Yeshua. According to Rood's chronology, exactly 69 sevens of years, 483 years, passed between the decree of Artaxerxes to restore Jerusalem and the day John the Baptist publicly identified Yeshua as the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Interesting. Exactly 69 sevens of years passed between that decree and when John the Baptist publicly identified Yeshua. This fulfilled the first 69 sevens of Daniel's prophecy and left one final 7 yet to be completed. Rood teaches that this remaining 7 was fulfilled through Yeshua's earthly ministry. Rather than lasting 3.5 years, as traditionally taught, he argues that Yeshua's ministry lasted exactly 70 literal weeks. And turns out, if you do this, it does, creating a prophetic parallel to Daniel's 77s. According to this view, this count began the day Yeshua was baptized by John in the Jordan River, on the far left. The ministry continued through Yeshua's teaching, miracles, death, and resurrection, and post-resurrection appearances. The prophetic mission was not completed at the resurrection. However, Rood argues that it concluded on the Feast of Shavuot, when Yeshua poured out the Holy Spirit upon his disciples, baptizing them in fire, as it were. So baptism to baptism. Rood further contends that later interpreters lengthened Yeshua's ministry by accepting the disputed Passover reference in John 6:4 and by extending the chronology into the book of Acts. In his reconstruction, every week of Yeshua's ministry can be accounted for, from his baptism until the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, forming a complete 70-week mission. Whether one agrees with Rood's conclusions or not, his approach highlights the importance of Daniel's prophecy and its connection to the timing of Messiah's ministry. Interesting. Rood argues that Yeshua's ministry lasted 70 weeks, which equals how many days? 49. Yep. According to Rood's chronology, the 70-week period begins at Yeshua's baptism and concludes at Shavuot, which is the baptism of fire. So, in conclusion, Michael Rood's 70-week ministry model stands or falls on 3 things: the feeding of the 5,000, providing an accurate chronological anchor; the Passover reference in John 6:4 being a later textual addition; and the feast in John 5 being Shavuot rather than Passover. Well, I think we looked at that one and kind of concluded that ourselves. Mm-hmm. That's probably right. John 6:4 can be there or not.
No,
and the feeding of the 5,000, it is what it is. So, I think it's right. But from these premises, he concludes that the gospel record presents a continuous 70-week ministry with no missing years. He further argues that this chronology unlocks the prophetic meaning of Daniel's 77s and restores what he believes was the understanding of many early Christian writers, whether one ultimately agrees with his conclusions or not. His argument represents one of the most comprehensive attempts to reconstruct the ministry of Yeshua according to the biblical feast calendar and the internal chronology of the Gospels. So, that's a brief reason why he believes that. And like I said, I'll give you guys the whole introduction to this, which really expounds on it. But anyway, any alternative views, any challenges, any different ideas? I will say it's really interesting how he literally takes, when it says after 3 days or after a week or whatever, he plots it and says, okay. And there are some questionable areas as to what happened when, but again, with what John did, my friend John, with the correlating the portions with what Yeshua did,
Well,
it
that's
still
what
lines
we,
up.
that's what we try to do every week when we read the Torah and then the Haftorah, is to find in the gospel readings, what, where is the teaching?
Right.
Because he's teaching these, these
Yeah.
Torah portions.
So I wonder then, if we did that ourselves,
Yes,
how much of that would line up with this?
yeah, that would be a good little exercise.
It may not all line up, but, so yeah, here he's got you can see here, right, the baptism in water, 70 weeks, that's from there to there.
Mhm.
Acceptable year of the Lord is there to there. He's got everything all lined up. One thing, go ahead.
Is that something that's printable? I mean, not
Yeah, I
that
mean,
size,
I have access to a PDF if you want to print it yourselves. Yeah, for sure.
not that size though.
No, you can be whatever. It actually scales from this, like, 1 foot by 4 feet to this. It's the same thing.
Can you just look at it online and like on the PDF and just move it around, so you can just have?
Yeah,
it on
for
your
sure you can.
computer?
Yeah,
Can you send that
out
it's a lot easier. Yeah, I can do that. So I'll get that.
Great, yeah, I'll have to look at that.
So the 70-week PDF and the introduction.
Can you get Michael to come and teach us?
Yeah, he did here once. Remember in the basement
Yep.
on his motorcycle when he could still drive it.
Yeah.
Now he can't. He's had a stroke. No more of that. So, but yeah.
I was listening to someone, and I was sitting here trying racking my brain who it was, who was saying that rabbis would go and gather students to follow them for 1 year. And they would follow them, leave everything and follow them for 1 year. And
I've heard that too, and I heard that it was like it was a sabbatical year,
Mhm.
or kind of everybody did that. But I don't know how everybody would do that, but
Well, it was an internship?
I guess so.
I heard, yeah, that's what was supposedly happening with the disciples.
Well, yeah, how
That's
could
why
they just
said,
leave their
you know,
fishing stuff
Yeah.
just so
leave
readily?
everything behind and come follow me. And
Well-
And
they
it
would
was-
sit at his
it was-
feet for a year and learn.
and it was such an honor, anybody would jump if they got asked.
Well, Deanna also said at one point, I remember her saying that the amount of fish that they got from that catch would have probably went to the market and they would have enough funds to support their family
Right.
and be,
Yeah.
You know what just hit me was, the book of Acts 15, when the argument about the Gentiles coming into the faith,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't stress them out, we impose 4 things on them. Remember those 4 things they imposed on them?
Mm-hmm.
That when we write to them, they abstain from pollution of idols, from fornication, from things strangled, from blood. From Moses of old time hath in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogue every Sabbath day. I'm wondering if that wasn't a year. In other words, they don't get circumcised. Go to the Shabbat, go to the temple, study the Torah for 1 year. And if you are convinced that this is where you want to go, then you can get circumcised.
Yeah, because you get the whole Torah portion. You get the whole Torah reading cycle.
Which is probably ties in with what you're saying about the internship.
And
Interesting.
I
What's the
think
thought?
it's the Didache that they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls that laid out where they didn't accept you. You couldn't just walk in and say, I'm a convert. You had to go through all
Well, that's what they're saying here.
discipleship,
Yeah, these 4 things. Then they can fellowship
Yeah.
with us if they do these 4 things only.
right?
You
You
can't
had,
expect them to know the whole Torah,
right,
because we were raised in it. And you can't expect them to get circumcised. It's a big decision.
Well, like, yeah.
Won't be long now.
But I mean, we do that here, right?
No.
Before you come into the church, okay, there's no smoking in here,
Right.
right? Leave your drugs outside. Yeah, well, you know. Right? I mean, we do the same thing. There's a few rules to stepping inside the church. Not many, but if you'll make yourself acceptable, come on in. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Again, those 4 rules are for, about eating kosher.
That's right.
So that you can sit down and have a meal with somebody and start communication. There's this guy online, Rob Solberg, who is
Oh, yes.
anti-Torah, and his every click he gets now is from Messianics fighting him on
Oh,
these
good.
issues.
Finally.
There's
That's the only way he's getting,
There's nothing worse than an
Engagement.
anti-Semitic Jew, you know?
Yeah, Solberg. yeah.
Sheesh.
right?
You
Yeah,
know?
does he even know he's a Jew? No, probably not,
Oh, Goldberg, of course.
right? Never thought about that.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting, all the little nuances. I don't know whether I hear it from Michael first or whatever, but the whole thing about when the resurrected Yeshua is speaking to Peter and saying, "Do you love me? Do you love me?" And the two different words being used there,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Do you love me completely?
Do you
No.
Do you phileo me?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you phileo me?
Yeah. Or no, do you agape me?
Agape me.
Yeah. No, I only phileo you.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Huh. We don't pick up on stuff like that.
Did you see the, not debate, but discussion he had with Doug Hamp?
Yeah.
Oh,
Did you
this
watch that
Solberg dude? Yeah.
And then there's a guy I watch, I can't think of his name,
Matt.
Matthew, where he
Mhm.
went back and reviewed it. I thought that was
Yeah.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah. All kinds of snakes in the
Well,
grass
that
like that. Dude.
Solberg is the one who, gave my daughter the book called Torahism.
Torahism.
And he had it in our house that one Hanukkah, in our upstairs bedroom that.
Anoint that room.
Yeah, right?
Mhm.
And Solberg, you guys ever watch Solberg? He's
Yes.
tricky. He'll be right along with you going, "Oh yeah, I agree. And all of a sudden, when he's like, "Whoa, wait a minute, you're way off now."
Mhm.
But no, I agreed with you back here, so agree with me over here. Did God say?
Yeah, he said, what does that sound like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, anyway, hope you guys
Thank you.
enjoyed that.
was
Yeah.
Very good, appreciate that.
There.
So I didn't get a chance to practice it because we had an emergency happen at home with
You did, yeah, it's good.